Our speaker today is going to be Steve Guo, and he is going to be speaking. So,
and maybe interpretive dance.
Okay, yes. So a fun evening will be had by all. Let's give Steve a hand.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks everyone for showing up tonight. I know it's a school night, it's a weeknight. One of the things that 8th Light really believes in is codecraft, and one of the things about being a code crafter is that we do things above and beyond normal. We actually take pride in what we do. We continuously learn. We also share with each other and within the community, and so this is in part sharing with you as well as sharing with me. The talk tonight will be an interactive talk. Please let me know if you have questions or if you have something to add to some points that I bring up. This is by no means XP according to Steve. This is XP according to all of my experiences, all of the people that I have worked with and interacted with, as well as yourselves. So please, let's try. I will be asking some questions every now and again, and if you have a question or want to make a comment, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll work on bringing that out. My name is Steve Guo. I'm a developer from the Seattle branch of 8th Light. It's a new branch, and I've been writing code for about 20 years now. I've been XP since about 2004, 2005, and I've found myself being even more XP as I get older. I have some interesting notes on that I'll get into as we get into the talk. But tonight we're here to talk about why pay 2 developers to do the work of 1, and other XP myths debunked or either fact or fiction. So it's more of a discussion about some of these. First, I'd like to start off with, what does XP mean to you? I've had recruiters talk to me and say, you know, Steve, you really need to remove XP from your LinkedIn profile or your resume because Windows XP is just, it's way too long ago. Anyone?
Pair programming?
Pair programming? Yep. And
flying by the seat of your pants.
Flying by the seat of your pants. Yeah. That can certainly be that part of it. So to me, XP, how I learned about XP was, and how it stuck into my head, Kent Beck wrote a book in 1999. One of the things that he talks about in the book is taking things to the extreme. So we believe that having a code review is a good thing. So let's take that to the extreme, and let's have continuous code review with pair programming. If we believe that testing our code is good, let's take that to the extreme, and let's actually have the tests drive how we write the code. If we believe that integration is key, then what we do is we take that to the next level and we continuously integrate. So some of these are some of the technical practices that I grew to love and really associate with XP, and a lot of people do. The DevOps movement is actually starting to take some of those practices and make them their own as well as it evolves through. So that's what XP means to me. It's not this, flying by the seat of your pants. Some people I talk to that don't know about programming in XP, they think that it is this. I personally would not jump out of a perfectly good airplane and do this. I would much rather be doing it down a river. So what is extreme programming? The definition, I'll read this through, is extreme programming is an agile software development framework that aims to produce higher quality software and higher quality of life for the development team. XP is the most specific of the agile frameworks regarding appropriate engineering practices and software development. This is defined by the Agile Alliance. Kent Beck, the person who wrote this book that actually coined the term XP, he has 2 versions of it. I have this one. This is the first edition that I buy off of Amazon. This is about my 6th copy. I can get them for $2 to $4 used for the first edition. And I've gotten smart and I have a Kindle edition for the third one, or for the second edition after having given that one out. What's interesting is that Here on page 17, it was in Roman numerals, I had to calculate. It talks about what is XP, and it talks about these technical practices. I'm not going to ask you to read this because I can't. 5 years later, he came out with the second edition of it that is on my Kindle right here, and chapter 1, what is XP? The definition changes quite a bit. So in this one, he talks about these practices very much like this does. In this one, the first sentence of this, what is XP? Extreme programming, XP is about social change. It is about letting go of habits and patterns that were adapted in your past, but now get in the way of us doing our best work. It is about giving up the defenses that protect us from that protect us but interfere with our productivity. It may leave us feeling exposed. So it's interesting, and if you keep reading through his the preface in the second edition, he talks about how when he started, it was the technical practices and the core values, but as he evolved into it and as he started to apply it more, it was more about working with people and how you work with people. So that's just a little bit about the definition and how it's defined. I'm going to come in and talk about the key values, because the key values Beck finds very important across all of them. The first of which is communication. If you're doing social impact, social change, you need to communicate with people. That surprisingly enough falls under the Agile umbrella as well too. Simplicity, a lot of the practices that he has deal around writing simple code and letting the code evolve. Feedback, Agile loves feedback as well. And it's about getting appropriate feedback not only from the code you're writing, but from the product you're delivering and the value you're delivering. Respect. This goes back a little bit more to the social change, and the social aspect of it is not only respecting yourself, but respecting other people, respecting the craft of writing code. And then my favorite, courage. There's a lot that I've been working on in this last year that centers around courage, having the courage to do all sorts of things, having the courage to implement the simplest, stupidest thing possible, and iterating on that, because that falls back to the simplicity. And then I have to communicate that back to the people I'm working with, as well as I get feedback from them about, Steve, you just did this really stupid, simple thing. But all together, it provides a wonderful framework to write some excellent code. I humbly propose a sixth one to that, which is humility as well too. I've met quite a few very, very good, solid XP developers that are not very humble. I can learn from every single person in this room. I can learn from interns. I can learn from my neighbor kid who just did his freshman year in college and came back, and I started tutoring him in XP, pair programming and TDD. He taught me other things. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So humility is what I propose. I don't know if I'll ever meet Kent Beck. I hope to someday, and I will talk to him about it. So I asked for a whiteboard here. What are some myths that people might know or think about for XP? Or if you have any myths that you can think you want debunked or that I might not cover.
XP is hard.
Ooh, I'm going to erase this. XP is hard.
It's only for experts.
Ooh. Extreme experts.
Yes.
XP won't work in my company.
Uh-huh. Can I put for me instead of my company?
XP means that you don't do any planning.
Uh-huh, yeah. XP means no planning. I'll go with the popcorn stop popping. Those are great. All 4 of those I will dive into, and I will get to as we talk about this. As the picture previously showed with the guy jumping out of the plane, this guy, he's done some planning. He hasn't just jumped out of a plane. So he's certainly well aware of what he's doing. Let me jump through these guys and get into talking about some of these. Extreme programming came out in 1999. Is it still relevant today? I hear this from a number of folks, and I would say that yes, it is still very relevant today. The practices that he talks about, the technical practices, even the agile process practices, as well as quite certainly the social contracts and the social interactions that he talks about are very relevant today in today's software world. So I would say that this myth is not a myth. This is actually a fact that yes, it is still relevant today. And then a little bit too, the XP is hard, TDD is hard. I hear that from a lot of folks that I see in different engagements. And I can say that it took me 4 years of diligence and constant trying to really get into TDD until it became habit. It is difficult, but change is hard for humans, people, and any new habit that you're trying to do over something that you do professionally is relatively hard to do. So I would say, yes, it's true, it is hard, but it's hard in the fact that it's change and it's a new skill. Once you reach that skill and have that skill, it's relatively easy. Nowadays, it's hard for me to write code without TDD or without XP. TDD is slow. It can be slow, especially when you're learning it and first picking it up. But this falls back again on any other skill that you're first picking up. It's difficult to get into it. Nowadays, it results in more code being written than if I'm not writing tests. But the clarity and the simplicity and how the tests drive my code make up for that extra code that I'm writing. TDD actually helps save me from writing extra code that I won't need and then have to debug and troubleshoot later. So again, this one, TDD can be slow, but it does get faster. TDD means no defects, 0 defects, which is blatantly false. TDD does not ensure you won't have defects. TDD can actually make it so that you have fewer defects. I certainly agree that if you're writing code test-driven, you will have fewer defects than if you're just writing it without tests. However, bugs will still get in the code, one way or another. If you can write a test for that bug that comes in, I can guarantee you will not have any regression of that bug. So in that case, when I talk to business owners and to product owners, I say, I can guarantee you no regression on defects. I can't guarantee that I have 0 defects. Testing should be left to QA. This doesn't actually belong with XP. It doesn't talk about anything about QA, but this is some of the questions that I get when I go out and talk with folks, and which is why it's in the slide deck. And QA plays a very wonderful role in software, and I firmly believe that QA deserves and has a place at the table. Testers think about code, not about code, they think about a product. They are the customer advocate. They are the person that knows how to break and use the product that you are writing in the way that the consumer will, and will break it in ways that you won't even think of. I do believe that things like test plans are inhumane, that a tester going through in this complex test plan, that's all automated by unit tests if we're doing TDD correctly. So testing, yes, testing should be there. Testing can be done by QA and should be done in an exploratory fashion. The developers that are writing code should be writing the tests themselves. Similarly, and this point sort of bleeds into the other one, TDD replaces QA. I said they do belong at the table. They think about code in a very different way. They provide value. Let's use them for their value and not necessarily for very easy tasks that could be and should be automated when we're writing tests, writing code. I work better alone. It's not one of those. I work better alone. This is something that I hear very frequently, and we had some discussion about that. There are lots of studies. A lot of my studies that I'm going to quote are a little bit dated, but the facts haven't changed in the time it is. In 2001, Laurie Williams did an extensive study on pair programming that essentially said that two developers writing code separately would deliver 80% more defects and only be 15% faster than two developers writing code paired. So if those two individual developers wrote 200 units worth of work that day, that pair would write 170 units of work with 80% fewer defects. And so you may work better alone, you may write more code, but that study says you will write more code and you will introduce more defects alone. Now you may feel you do, and you might write more lines of code, but statistically, there are some things that go back to collaboratively writing code helps to write more solid code and fewer defects. It's my code. I've come into organizations where there are people that believe certain parts of the product are their code, that other folks say, oh, no, you can't go into that project because that's Joe's project, or that's so-and-so, and they're on vacation, and we don't touch that code because last time we touched that code, we caused a $5 million defect, or it wasn't able to be straightened out until years later. Well, a lot of times that is part of a symptom where, number one, the code that we write for a company is never our code. It doesn't belong to us, it doesn't belong to the team, it belongs to the company. So part of that is the social contract that we have to work with the company and offer up something to be a little bit more responsible, where we don't think of it as my code so much as it's the team's code or the project's code, and we can work on it together. It actually frees you up when you start working in a more collaborative environment. It will free you up so that you can have weekends, you can take vacations, you can go away. I tend to be an early developer, so I work sometimes 6 to 3, sometimes 7 to 4. There are some developers like to come in later, maybe work 10 to 6. I can go home and hand off my code to my pair, and they can keep working on it. So to me, it's never been about my code. It's about our code and working with the company. Pairing doesn't work for senior or junior levels when you have two pairs that are of equal strength together. I sort of throw this back on if you have two expert musicians together, like, I don't know, Paul McCartney and John Lennon, if he were still alive, playing the guitar on stage. They're two experts. Would you like to go hear that concert? I think they'd make some pretty good music. Or maybe the Marcellus brothers. I would love to be at their family reunion, because guess what? You got music happening there from experts that's going to be out of this world. Now, junior, you're not going to get music that's out of this world. You will get a synergy though. And everyone has expertise and knowledge across different realms. You will get knowledge sharing across it. You also get similar knowledge and sharing and learning happening at even lower levels than junior, at novice. So to me, and I consider myself more of a pairing expert, I don't feel that there's a perfect pair in here. And any pair is a perfect pair to me. I've even paired with a guy from accounting once, and I had a wonderful time. I learned stuff about accounting, he learned stuff about programming. It was a win-win. Pairing doesn't work for introverts. I hear this a lot. I am actually an introvert. On the Myers-Briggs scale, I score as a weak introvert, not a strong introvert, but a weak one. After tonight's gathering, I'm going to go back to my hotel room and crash. Introverts, being an introvert does not mean you can't interact with people. It means that it drains your energy. So you have to find other ways to get that energy back or to hedge your bets. We were talking a little bit earlier about Pomodoro timers. Taking frequent breaks and enforcing those breaks are a wonderful way to do it. One of the things with pair programming, and especially when I have good pairing sessions, I go home exhausted. 6 hours of pair programming, I'm done, period. And I've written some of the best code that I've ever written until tomorrow, and I come back and I look at it and I go, what was I thinking when I? But that's a lot less likely because I had a pair that helped keep me in check too. So pairing is not just for introverts or extroverts. There are ways around that. I don't want to give up my knowledge, fear of replacement. This sort of goes a little bit back to this is my code. Some people create this environment where they are the only ones that can maintain it because they feel that it's job security. That is a very real fear. When I'm coming into an environment and I come into that type of situation, that is absolutely a discussion that I want to have, and I want to have that in person with that developer and discuss it and talk about who's being held hostage by that code. Because, like I said for the other about it's not my code, can you take a vacation? Can you go home for the weekend? Do you get phone calls in the middle of the night? Do you like that? I don't like that. And I can tell you, I love having shared responsibility on the team. I have a 3-week vacation coming up where I'm going to be traveling around Europe with my family, meeting with friends and family. And I don't want to have to think about code. I don't want to have to bring my laptop, and I don't think I will. I will be bringing Slack, or my phone, and it'll have Slack so they can reach out to me. But we pair and we mob on everything, so I can just go. Why didn't you write it correctly the first time? This I have heard from CEOs, CTOs, directors, investors, all these things about why aren't you writing right the first time? Why do you have to refactor? Well, I sort of go back and I say, some of these folks have advanced degrees. Some of them have had to make a thesis. So they've all certainly done college term papers of some sort. I said, would you ever think of writing your thesis the night before and turning it in with no edits? They go, of course not. I'm like, well, why not? Well, because I would need peer review, I would need to make edits, I'd need to change things, I'd get more information, and I'd say, exactly, that is exactly why we can't write it right the first time. I then go and I start talking a little bit more about, well, we have emergent requirements. We never know, everyone in this room that has written code has, for someone else, they ask for one thing, but they really want something else. And you discover it along the way. So part of XP comes in and says, let's delay our planning a little. It's not that we have no planning. We will delay our planning just a little, or quite a bit, and do just the right amount of planning, sort of just-in-time planning. And then why should you pay 2 developers to do the work of 1? I talked a little bit about that with I like to work alone. There are lots of studies on pair programming, and it delivers higher quality code. If you look at the lifespan of a product and not just the initial implementation of it, you come up with bugs and defects take 80% of the cost of the software we write over the whole lifespan of the code. So if you take that statistic that I said earlier about you get 80% fewer defects, you're talking about saving millions of dollars over the lifespan of that code. Unless, of course, you're only one person writing one small app, then it's a smaller amount of money. But I've worked for billion-dollar companies, I've worked for Fortune 100 companies, and when I start talking numbers on how much pair programming can save them on the bottom line, their eyes start to open up. So why do we do that? Because scientific studies have shown two developers writing code together write fewer defects, write better engineered code, shared knowledge, all sorts of things compared to two developers writing code solo. Now is not the time to learn new things. How many people have been on a project that started off with a book club that then got canceled because you had to push code, or code was shipping very soon? Anyone? Yeah. I've been on a number of products where it's like, no, we don't have time for book clubs. It doesn't look good. You know, people will come in and see everyone gathered around a table at lunch, eating their lunch, reading a book. Why aren't you working? I hate to say it, but it is never a good time to learn, except knowing that when you're learning things, you actually have an opportunity of saving time as you go forward. One of the things that I know is, and this gets back a little bit to the learning and a little bit to pairing and refactoring. I was on a 6-month gig. This was in, I think, 2012 with Affordable Healthcare when it was coming out. So there was a timeline. There was a deadline of January 1st for healthcare enrollment. This was about June, July. We were tasked to bring in a team of XP developers, 6 developers, and we were tasked with implementing their effectuation and recon system for new patients that are coming in from the state healthcare. It took us 4 months to get the first part of a 4-part system. And it doesn't take an accountant to do the math on that if it takes you 4 months to do your first implementation and you've got 3 more left to go in only 2 months, it's not going to work out. And so in that time, we had to learn the new system, we had to learn what they were talking about, and we had to implement it. All along the way, we were saying, we got this, we're okay. And they're panicking, they're going crazy. And so we say, wait, we got this first system, let's go ahead, we need to stop and refactor this first system because we've learned some new things along the way. So we do. And they're like, wait, you're already going to be late, you're going to take time and refactor. So we ended up refactoring for a couple of weeks. Then the next part of that system, because we'd refactored, took us 2 weeks. And they could do the math there because we were already at 5 months. And if the next 2 parts of the system took 2 weeks and 2 weeks, we'd hit the date. They were ecstatic. They're like, yes, go. And we're like, but we're not done. We had some more new learning within that, and we're going to refactor this again. Took us 2 days. They're like, but okay. The next part of the system, it took us 2 days to implement as well. And they were ecstatic because now we were coming in early. They were to have extra time and they could deploy and test. We said, no, wait, we're not done yet. And we refactored again. This time it took us a day. But the next part of the system took 2 hours. And we handed it off to them, dropped the mic, and walked out. So it's never time. You always have time to try new things and to learn new things. Because otherwise, you may not discover something that's going to save you and help you put out the fire. Allowing developers to control the CI/CD pipeline puts the company at risk. I've already mentioned that I've worked with healthcare, which has HIPAA rules. I've worked in banking, which has Sarbanes-Oxley. There's all sorts of different regulations out there that get interpreted as developers cannot push a button and deploy code. These are very much fake interpretations of those rules. However, there are ways around them. Now, a developer should not be putting financial code to production. You can, however, have a two-step process for the production step to be put in place and to be validated. The developer can push to all sorts of lower environments with a single click. There's nothing that says that a developer can't push code into lower environments. And very simply, you can put some constraints in place to protect them from pushing code to production. And keep the integrity of CI/CD and deploying code very quickly for developers. And the DevOps kind of movement. 10x developers. How many people have heard the term 10x developers? How many people think they exist? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Are you a 10x developer? 5x. Okay, well, that's half. I've met some brilliant developers in my time developing. I've been writing code for about 20 years. I've been in the game industry. I've been in biotech. I've been in some of the financial markets. I've met some brilliant developers. I would say none of them are 10x developers. I once worked with a guy who, over the weekend, wrote a domain-specific language to tackle a tough problem that we were working with. He likes to think of himself more as a 10x developer. However, no one could maintain that. Only he could maintain it. Only he could understand it. It may be that he wrote 10x the code of one developer, but you're going to need 10 more people to understand it. So in the wash, even a 10x or an 8x developer is not going to pay off in the long run. Now, I have had some great teams. I had a team in my most recent engagement that we had 3 mobile products that were working in parallel. One of them got started a little bit late. That product had a team that had 25% had 25% of the developers. It had a total of 2 developers on the team. And they got the same product done and reached feature parity with 2 other mobile products that had 8 developers on them apiece. Reached parity with them in 3 months. The other teams had essentially 8 to 9 month head start on them. And the only difference between those teams is one was an XP team. The other teams were not. So that's still not a 10x team. That's an 8x team if you do 25 a quarter and a quarter. So I still don't think that there's a 10x developer. I think that is a complete myth. But I would love to meet one. I would love to have discussions with them. I think that you can get high-performing developers individually and as a team. I've seen it work best as a team because then you don't have to pay one person huge amounts of money to keep them. You have a team and you have a way to bring people into that team and spread that knowledge across your whole organization. It's agile process. It's not one of those. XP talks about how to interact with product owners, how to deliver content, how to plan, how to estimate, a little bit on how to estimate. But it is not really about the process. It talks about a way to work in a social context and how to deliver code in a sustainable way. It changes the conversation a little. And it changes the conversation more around the lines of what Agile talks about too. True Agile, if you read the manifesto and the principles behind it, sustainable pace. In XP, they talk about sustainable pace as well too. It's about treating your developers nice and the product nice. bring that in, is XP is just the technical practices. It is. There are the technical practices, absolutely, and that's what caught me in the very beginning, is TDD, pair programming, ruthless refactoring, continuous integration. All of those caught me, but then I started realizing, especially as I pair programmed more and more, is that it's really about social change and working together. I can do more on a team with my teammates than I can do solo, and I can do it for a very long time. The sum of the team is greater than the sum of its parts. Absolutely. So XP has evolved since 1999. It has its lean roots, where it's talking about feedback, communication, early delivery. It has been moved more towards the DevOps movement, deploying code daily, having automated tests. Not only is it continuous integration, you're talking continuous deployment, continuous development. This book, Accelerate, is a wonderful book that just came out by Jez Humble and Nicole Forsgren. It gives statistics, hardcore statistics, that are backed up by peer-reviewed journals that talk about the technical practices that I'm talking about today that have evolved into DevOps, on how it enables you to deliver more code faster and better and sustainably. And it talks about those relationships and more of the social side. Without a doubt, to me, the technical practices are the foundation to XP. I would not consider myself XP personally if I didn't do TDD, pair programming, and ruthless refactoring. I'm starting to evolve that, though, because I very strongly believe that I can learn and that I'm continually looking for new things. I've recently started down a line of writing code in more small talk fashion, or as one of my friends talks about, micro objects, that starts to show me that test-driven development is still useful. There are places where it has gaps, and I don't know how to fill those gaps yet. So I evolve as well in my thinking. Now we've got a couple of things up here. We have XP is hard. We sort of talked about that. Anything is hard as you're learning it and you're just starting in with it. XP is only for experts. Well, Windows XP experts. No, XP is not for experts. XP can be done by anyone that wants to try it. There's a learning curve to it, absolutely. If you have someone that wants to learn it with you to help partner in that, you can learn a lot. And you can do some really good stuff with that. XP won't work for me and my company. That gets a little harder. That depends on what latitude you have to affect change with your environment and how you write code. I don't know of any program manager, development manager, engineering manager that wouldn't want me or someone to run an experiment that could prove and deliver higher quality code. And that to me is what XP promises and delivers. Because if you go to a manager and say, I'd like to try test-driven development, well, what do you need to do that? Well, I intend, and this is taking a chapter out of a book, Turn the Ship Around. The author escapes me right now, where he is David Marquette. He's a commander of a submarine, and he changed how his submarine worked. The people underneath him would come to him and say, I intend to take shore leave when we go to Hawaii. I have the building falling apart. I intend to take shore leave in Hawaii. And I have checked with my lieutenant. I've checked and made sure that all of my watches are covered, blah, blah, blah. And So if you go to your manager having thought this out with different ideas on how you're going to approach it and how it will affect the way you work, that manager would hopefully support that. Maybe not, but at least you tried. And then XP means no planning. It absolutely does require planning to still do XP, and Agile as well. It's just more just-in-time planning. You're not doing a big waterfall process. You're not spending years, months planning things out. But you do need a way to come up with how you're going to structure things and how you're going to work through things. So just a quick summary. I talked some about extreme programming, how Kent Beck defines it, how the community defines it, how that evolution has changed, that it's more of a social contract these days, social contract with values as well as practices underneath it. The values and the technical practices there. And that's about all that I have. Now, I'm absolutely open to having discussion about things that I've said tonight, concepts maybe may have been new to you, maybe I put a different spin on things. Maybe you say, no, absolutely not. Introverts cannot pair program. I'm happy to have that discussion. I won't have a fight, but I'll have a discussion. But that's all I have. Questions? Yeah.
One question on TDD replaces QA, that myth.
Yeah.
I haven't seen enough of that, like of XP playing out over time to see, like those roles will change, or that mindset is helpful. You want some of that mindset in the development team, and it doesn't have to be what we consider a programmer.
Mm-hmm.
Someone developing the product maker. Just curious. There is a place for QA, but is it the same size as what an organization will typically have?
Right, and so the question is, referring back to TDD replacing QA, what size is QA or how does it change? In organizations that I've done it, I've had transformations like that, there's generally a smaller size of QA in that official role. However, the people that, say you have 10 people that are on a QA team, there are certain members of that QA team that naturally want to, number one, either start training and become a developer. Number two, they don't want to work in a shop that has TDD because they're scared that it's going to eliminate their jobs regardless of what you say to them. And then there are those that are very, very, very skilled at finding ways to break the product. I mean, we've all seen people that are like that, that person knows how to break things. It's like my 9-year-old. He knows how to break things and does it really well. And so those are the people that you keep in those roles. And the people that want to be developers, train them up, let them be developers. A developer, some of the best developers that I've worked with have been SDETs that had transitioned from testers and that started thinking about code in a different way. And love pairing with them too. They have a different mindset when they're writing code. It's wonderful, and it's an opportunity for me to find my blind sides. It's uncomfortable sometimes because I go, no one's obviously ever going to put a magnet next to the hard drive. Why would you do that? We have that discussion for 15 minutes and then we shelve it. So yes, the size of QA tends to get smaller, and I've actually seen it where the department goes away, but those roles are still there. It's just embedded. One of the terms that have been used for it is T-shaped individuals. You have a team full of T-shaped. And so one of those T-shaped individuals on all the teams is a strong test skill. So in terms of the department structures, yes, I've seen those completely change, but the roles are still around. Yeah.
So for someone who's really new to XP and has maybe just heard about it today, how would they go about starting to learn how to work in an XP way?
So there are a couple different things that you can do for that. You can find a group that works on that. A lot of times, you don't find a lot of XP user groups around anymore. You find more code craftsmanship, code craft user groups that start doing that. There's the internet. There's plenty of YouTube videos on how to do pair programming, how to do refactoring, how to do test-driven development. There's this book, which is a wonderful way to start, written by Kent Beck in '99. You can go with version 1 or version 2 with that. The best way that I've found to do it is to find someone that wants to learn it with you and that wants to play with it. Run an experiment. Try and figure out how you can play with test-driven code, TDD. There are plenty of code katas out on the web that would allow you to practice refactoring, that allow you to write code as well, TDD. Pair programming, obviously, if you have a partner that's learning with you, you can start pair programming. It's interesting that I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old that both code. And when they started coding, of course it was in Java and Minecraft mods, they did it together paired. No one told them, I didn't tell them to write their code paired, but they got down there together paired. One wasn't really sure what he was doing, but he's saying, hey, you forgot a semicolon there. Or don't you need the little squiggly bracket down there? He didn't necessarily know what he was doing with it. And so they are now 9 and 11. This is when they were 5 and 7. So, it's natural for us, and there's a joke in some of the XP world that everything you learn to be a good developer, you learned in kindergarten. And in a lot of ways, that's true. We've unlearned a lot of the things that we used to do that really make good code now. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Now, many of the issues written for XP, you can also just apply, you can just put Agile in terms of
Yes.
for the same, see like, oh, I can't do Agile because of this. The same needs no planning, it won't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I see like a lot of Agile shops are like, where the Agile process fails because you're not doing it adequately, like no one like Scrum and doing it. So
Yep.
I see like XP, like fully XP methods, deployments that failed because, pair programming didn't work or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. So
That was an earthquake.
that was an earthquake? Oh, well.
That was a small one, but yeah.
Okay. So that is a very interesting question. So the question is, have I seen any development transformations fail because they're XP, because of the XP practices? I have not seen any fail because of that. I've seen them be very successful at getting through projects. What I've seen, and I'll go back to a wireless carrier that I worked for, that I was brought in to do an agile transformation for 13 teams. And it was a relatively big department. That team had me there for 18 months. Me and 8 other XP coaches turned that team around. We were blowing through the backlog. We turned their deployments from nightmare months to a weekend that was a breeze, where people were taking naps during the deployment of the software. That company, their merger fell through, and the VP that sponsored us, as soon as he got his bonus money, took off. So we had no support from that VP level. A new VP came in and said, let's see here, budget's really sort of high, but you guys are knocking it out of the park. I see all these developers out there paired up at these stations. I can do math, I can cut budget, and that way everyone works solo. And we lost support. So I've seen XP be very successful, but then people come in that aren't bought into it at higher levels, and it falls apart. I have I have met individuals that did not want to pair program, that felt test-driven development was a waste of time, and they throw a video in front of my face saying, look, TDD is dead. It's a 6-part series, including the guy that wrote the book. No, but he wasn't, and that's not what it said. So there are lots of excuses for not doing it. I have seen amazing results come from teams that did do it. And what I would say is, how many people have ever been on a high-functioning XP team? Okay? That's not uncommon. Would you want to be on one again?
Yeah.
Are you striving to find that high?
It's been 15 years and haven't found it.
Absolutely. I've been on my first shot, I've created 5. And I continually look for those. And the most recent team that I came off of was the best XP team that I've ever been on. Not only were we writing code, amazing code, and good code, we were creative on top of that. So if you look at micro-objects on the web, you look at kata culture on the web, you look at fast agile on the web, all 3 of those, fast agile was sort of before that, but it really got its roots within it. But certainly kata culture and micro-objects came from that team. And it's the mindset of the collaboration that happened on it. In part, this talk tonight was me and another member on that team. I was helping him with this presentation. We're pairing on a presentation that he's giving Thursday night at Agile Midwest, or Midwest Agile. And Ray very kindly asked me to come down here and give a presentation. I was trying to figure out what presentation I wanted to give, and I said, hey, I've been helping you with this one. Can I give this one? So this was the first shot on this presentation, too. Yeah?
Can you speak about XP or pair programming as it pertains to working remotely or managing workers offshore due to globalization for software products or projects?
Yeah. I can tell you that pair programming remotely is tough. They've made a lot of progress, leaps and bounds in video conferencing. They still haven't yet found a way around the limits of the speed of light. So if you're pairing with someone in India or if you're pairing with someone in London, there's a lag, and that lag makes it very difficult for you to share a keyboard. So in the cases where I do, and the team that I'm on right now is based in London. So it's me and 4 other 8th lighters in London. We do what Llewellyn Falco calls strong style pair programming. And that is where everything that gets input into the keyboard has to go from someone's mouth through someone's ears and their hands. So when I'm talking, someone else is typing, and so the audio lag isn't bad, it's the keyboard lag that kills you if you're sharing a desktop. So when I'm talking, they're typing, and then we'll switch complete control. So then I'm the one whose desktop is being shared, and I'm typing while they're talking to me and telling me what to do. So there are challenges to it. And I would strongly suggest that not be your first experience with it, because it's going to be frustrating and very difficult. You're essentially you're learning how to drive a car in a manual rather than automatic, which is not impossible to do. That's how my mom taught me. But you're handicapping yourself, and it's not going to be as good an experience. It can certainly be done. There are also some great new things. VS Code has some code sharing, some control sharing tools to it now. I know that Vim has some as well, and where basically you have mirrored controls. You're looking at an IDE that mirrors across, and it's not a screen share where you have control of the screen. It is actually a connection IDE to IDE where you can type. VS Code has some problems with running tests. You can't kick off the tests on someone else's computer. So, there are complications to it. But it can absolutely be done. And to me, it's where there's a will, there's a way. You can figure out a way to do it. Yeah?
I think the time zone challenge is bigger than a lot of the other factors.
Yeah.
As long as you can talk face to face and
Mm-hmm.
share something, it's great, but when you start getting somebody up late or early, that's where
Yeah, my day starts at 6 a.m. for the London crew because I'm based out of Seattle. We get 3 hours of overlap. India is tough as well. I've been on teams where it's India, the States, and England. And then it's like, when can you schedule a meeting? Someone's staying up somewhere. Yeah. What else?
Dealing with a 2-hour time delay with Chicago is actually already like giving me some friction.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it'd be like that.
Yeah, and then you add to that the social aspect of it. For me, when I'm working with a team and I'm working with a team remote, I need to be with that team frequently. So I may have to be there once a month for a week or once every 2-3 months. Sometimes you can make it so it's more of an equal sharing that, you know, I worked with a team that was in McMinnville, Oregon on some insurance there. And they had a team there, and McMinnville, Oregon from Seattle is about a 6-hour drive. And so we had a deal. Every month we would go and spend a week there. And so it would just flip-flop. They would come up, visit us, we'd go down and visit them. And that does a lot. There is a huge amount to the social interaction of going out and having a meal with people, being able to sit at a table and talk to them and have gestures that work, or even sit next to them and pair and point at things. Yes?
A little bit on that topic, and also the point about introverts, like someone who's just starting to do pair programming.
Yeah.
Definitely there's like a mental exhaustion that goes with it,
Mhm.
even extrovert or introvert.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what's kind of, I mean, do you have like thoughts or tricks to that you use to do that? I mean, for example, you only have 3 hours with the London team. Does that mean there's really only, you're limiting it to like that time that you're actually, you know, doing that kind of split and cross
Mhm.
referencing?
So the question is, are there any tricks to learning and picking up pair programming, or?
No, I guess it's, what are your thoughts on how you deal with that mental exhaustion?
Oh, yes.
That comes from having to talk and code at the same time, and talk, code, think at the same time. with
Right.
People for extended periods of time.
Yep. So the exhaustion that comes from pair programming. The best thing was talking with Cody about this earlier is Pomodoro timer. There's a technique that's Pomodoro or tomato timer that they say start with 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off, and you have a little timer that does it. I don't have my iPad here. My iPad has a Pomodoro timer, focus timer. It's good for it. My phone has one. My laptop has one too. On the team I was at most recently, the one that has done some amazing things, we actually played around with the Pomodoro timer to find out our best time, because we were all reading different books as we went around through it. And someone came up with something they heard on NPR that said 50 minutes on, 10 minutes off. And then we'd always heard 20, 24 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And so we started playing with the times. And one mob, and so we did mob programming at this, my most recent place. One mob worked really well with 34-minute intervals and a 6-minute break. Another mob worked really well with the standard 24 and 5. Another mob did 30 or 45-minute on and offs.
Imagine humans are different from each other.
Imagine that. And groups, as they interact, change. So the Pomodoro timer, if you're not familiar with that, is a way to work together where you make sure you stop, you have intervals and breaks before you get tired. So at 24 minutes, when the timer goes off, you're like, but we're just in the middle of, finish that last sentence or that last line of code, and then take a break. Get up, walk around. They say the best is to get up, walk around, exercise out of the building. The next best is to get up, walk around the office. The key is you can't be thinking about or talking about the work that you're doing. Your brain has to take a complete break from it. and then get back right into it. If you find yourself with your pair and your phone comes out and you start going like this, you've waited too long. Your brain has actually forced you to take a distraction. So I've found that the best way for beginning teams to get into that is to use that Pomodoro timer. You will still leave exhausted, but you will find you keep your energy levels up. It's more like, yes, I can run that marathon. I'm still tired at the end, but I made it to the end. Does that make sense? Awesome. Anything else? Well, thank you. Thank you, 8th Light LA.